My name's Terry Day. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I'm also a songwriter and a lyricist and a painter, and some people call me a poet. Although I kind of don't think my lyrics are, they're poetical lyrics, so they're seen as poetry. In my lyrics I kind of deal with basically man's inhumanity to man, and that involves like subjects of war, sex, love, and the fear of death. The inspiration for my music is based in improvisation, and what I like is the interaction of two musicians or more musicians. I like the interaction of musicians, can be two, more, or a group. And as for myself, the reason for playing music is just to explore my creativity. But everything that I do is to explore my creativity. So, in a way, I only enter an artifact like music or painting to explore my creativity, to see where that leads me. And I try not to put too many parameters on it. So I let my creativity be inclusive. Yeah, my first instrument I wanted to play was the alto saxophone when I was 9 years old, but my family, who are all musicians, taught me out of it because I had bad embouchure with my top teeth. And they were right, because when I played the alto later in my mid-20s, early 20s, I did have trouble with the embouchure. I then went on to play the drums. I was taught to play the drums to make dance music. And from there I had trouble with a 4x break, and I consulted my brother, who was a child prodigy on the drums, and he was a decade older than me, and he said, just carry on doing what you're doing. It's follow your own creativity. He was more or less teaching me to improvise, and so I kind of started improvising around about between 15 and 17, and by the time I was 20 I was already established in my mind how to make the music. And I came across a musician that was in the same space as me, the same point, musical point, and so we improvised right from the off. So we threw out tunes, we threw out structure, and we improvised straight away. The Luminaries Gallery exhibition was called Be Magnificent, Walthamstow College of Art between 1957 and 67, and I was there in 62, 63. And it was a very selective. I think it was selective around kind of Peter Blake and Ian Dury mainly, and because of my association with Ian as a musician, and I was poured into that, and also the fact that I was possibly the only art student. Well, I was the only art student that was practicing musically all the time from the word go. From when I went to 3 colleges, Walthamstow was the middle one. I was the only practicing musician amongst all the art students, so I kind of think I was selected on that basis, and also I have a kind of bit of recognition in the world of improvised music. Other than that, it was. I also did a workshop there, and that was mainly based in drawing, and also a performance with Marcus Coates, which is really interesting actually. That was just another improvised gig, and he's a performance artist. It kind of enters like in part the world of the shaman, and insofar as he asked the audience a question, and then he tries to answer that with his performance and me answering that musically, which I found really good, really enjoyable, and quite interesting. And the questions people asked was very profound, I thought, and very human, My main inspiration for making music is I come from a family of musicians, and by the time after the Second World War, my brother was one of the few people that had a collection of bebop musicians. So I grew up with bebop in the house, and my brothers were all my oldest brother was a jazz cognoscente and aficionado of bebop jazz, and my other brother was multi-instrumentalist, and my other brother was a child prodigy on the drums. So music was all around me, and I just had, like I said before, I just only the desire to play the alto. Well, like I said, in 1960 I joined a trio which was Russell Hardy on piano and Hardy Holman on bass, and we spent 5 years just playing. We never did a gig. The first gig we did was 1965, was a starting gate in Wood Green. But we used to go and see what was happening in music, and when I was at Royal College, I used to go and see, the Blue Notes came over and everybody was playing time, all the drummers were playing time, John Stevens, Louis Maholo, we turned up with the Blue Notes, and John Heisman, yeah, they were all playing time, and we were really worried because they were all playing tunes, they were all playing pieces, and we were kind of worried as a trio that our music was so different because we were just improvising. And we kind of thought, wow, we're not going to be accepted. And then we did a gig in 1965 at the Starting Gate, and we were kind of quite a sensation. And by that time, Russell was a very quiet piano player. I'm naturally quite a loud drummer, but I had to learn. It took me 5 years to be able to play quiet. But I used to whittle my drumsticks down so they had a very fine point so I could play quieter, and then I started using knitting needles. And Terry Holman would get an electric machine and run it up and down his bass, etc. So we were quite a little sensation as a trio, and then we played at the Starting Gate, and at the end of the evening, different groups used to come together, and there was a kind of a final jam at the end, but it wasn't really a jam. It was like people from each group who wanted to come together started playing, and that went on and became the Continuous Music Ensemble, and then in 1968 it changed itself. Then it changed its name to the People Band because the Spontaneous Music Ensemble had given birth to itself. Funny old phrase, giving birth to itself, but it had John Stevens SME. And so the People Band changed its name because it was working with the People Show, and I worked with the People Show in 1965 too. And that was when we were Better Books with Jeff Nuttall's productions. then I know that I got to a certain point. I was playing with, I can't remember, I was playing with maybe Dudu Papuana and Pete Lima or something. But I had a spell where I just thought, well, I've had enough of the music in a way. I was with various groups, and I thought, oh, I just got to call a halt to this, because everything, I could play there and play with that group, and that went so far, and then play with that group, and that went so far, and it developed itself. Then the only group could only go so far, and then you join another group to introduce another kind of element into your music. So the groups were very kind of departmentalised in that sense. And then I just called out from the game, and said, it wasn't enough gigs. I had a family to support a family. And then about a year, I kind of opted out. And then Derek Bailey phoned me up and said, "You'll come and join the group." And that was with a quartet with Christine Jeffries and Johnny Diani on bass, Derek Bailey on guitar, myself on drums, percussion. And that was a really fantastic quartet. And then after that, I did frequent duos with Derek Bailey. Suffice to say that I regret never being recorded or entering an agreement with Derek Bailey. I'd just say follow your own creativity as far as you can, because the temptation is to limit your creativity so as you can join a club. Like I said, it's cliques, it's fashion, it's cliques, it's enclaves, this music's squared off, all the music's squared off. I mean, there's musicians that are playing the same thing, and they've been playing the same stuff for 40 years. It's tragic in a way. They've been playing the same stuff, and now I read, books that are heralding the kind of the purist element in English improvisation. And I think it's a tragedy myself, and because everything's boxed off and the amount of musicians that cross over is very few. There's only a few that cross over in a way, and I think that's tragic, personally. That might not just be an English thing either. I mean, I know that happened in Deutschland, in the 60s, because the people band up and went to Holland in the late 60s, and I went with them, and I stayed there for the next 5 years, and gradually, Holland was my second home. It was a little bit more open then, because the reason it was open in Holland was that, in fact, at somewhere at a club, or they were kind of art centres, everything, all the music went in, rock and roll, folk, jazz, all the improvisation, all went on in that community, community centre, whatever you call them, arts labs. They were called arts labs, the Cosmos, the Paradiso. but everything went. Whereas in England, you know, you had a jazz club, a folk club. Yeah, so these, you know, these musicians didn't know about each other. So I think there's a really purist streak in English music. I think it's also very repressive too. There you go. And I think I can say that because I know by how I've been accepted outside of England. We now come to the art world, and the art world is in the miniatures. So if we start with these ones here, so these are all from the 90s, and they're all abstracts, and these are done as paintings, yeah, more or less as colour fields. The art of Terry Day show at the Eclectic Art was a wonderful experience visually. It was nice the first time I see my paintings on the walls since 1987, so that was quite nice. My deep gratitude to you yourself. And it was nice to see that, and it was kind of funny to hear the reaction. I mean, you know, most of what you hung up on the wall was like, you know, not, you know, most of my work's kind of, you know, for want of a better word, soft porn. So there was only a few that were a little bit soft porn, and I was interested to see the reaction of that, which always gives me the fear of bringing out the vast body of my work, which is soft porn. So that was interesting. I was a learner, and I enjoyed it. It was very good. Musically, it was also good to do that week of music with different groups, and it was great to play my own drum set as well. Yeah, that was a treat. That was a real pleasure to play my own drum set and percussion. Yeah, and to play in the groups. It was nice to have all those different groups each night. That was a really wonderful experience. And my experience of the art of improvisers was like. I enjoyed the gig thoroughly with really Nakashima. Really, I thought it was wonderful. It's great she was over the other side. It did turn out great, but that kind of worried me that, you know, the audience was like looking both ways. But I enjoyed that.